Claude Juncker warns MPs threatening to reject Theresa May's improved Brexit deal. This is it. Follow live Brexit updates. The latest headlines in your inbox. The latest headlines in your inbox. Register with your social account or to log in. Jean-Claude Juncker has issued a stark warning to MPs threatening to reject Theresa May's, saying there will be no third chance. The European Commission President's remarks came after the Prime Minister said she had secured legally binding changes to the agreement ahead of the Commons vote tonight, which were revealed on Monday night, have been slammed by MPs and Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who urged Parliament to reject the updated plans. But Mr. Juncker warned Britain's MPs that no further assurances will be given, telling the press conference which followed his and Mrs. May's talks in Strasbourg led. He said there.
Raindrops, truck top, smoking, no cooking the hot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that.